Jude, Sanat and Shibani Garat right here in our Mumbai studios. Shibani, it's been an action-packed day both on the domestic and the international front with the CJP protests gaining steam, even as fresh strikes are being witnessed across West Asia thanks to U.S. aggression. In fact, those tensions in West Asia continue to escalate, with the U.S. carrying out a 9th consecutive night of strikes targeting Iranian military infrastructure. Iran says multiple projectiles also struck the under-construction Darkovin nuclear plant and the Bushehr plant, though authorities maintain that there has been no radiation leak. Now, Tehran has reiterated that its sovereign rights over the Strait of Hormuz are non-negotiable, while Washington says it's receiving signals that Iran wants to negotiate. In fact, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is heading to Manila for the ASEAN foreign ministers meeting. And ahead of his departure, Rubio accused Iran of funding terrorism. Let's listen in.
I mean, Iran's economy is in shambles. They're 300% inflation, particularly on life-sustaining goods. They have some dwindling revenues to meet even their own payroll. They have food shortages. They have a drought, which he didn't cause. But they have a gasoline shortage and fuel shortage. All these problems existed before all of this began. They've just gotten worse. They will continue to get worse. And one of the reasons why Iran is in shambles, Iran is a rich country. One of the reasons why Iran is in shambles is because every penny that this regime there gets, be it through sanctions relief or through the oil they're able to get out, they invested in Hezbollah. They invested in Hamas. They spend billions of dollars supporting militias in Iraq, Hezbollah, and Hamas. They should be spending billions of dollars supporting the people of Iran. They should be spending billions in the country. But instead, they use it to sponsor terrorists. So I think there's a growing awareness of that inside of Iran. And I think there's even a growing awareness of that among some of the people in their government. In fact, we have heard that from some of the people in their government. But obviously, there's a tension here, and we'll see how that plays out. I can't tell you how it's going to play out. It's up to them.
Right, in the context of that ongoing crisis, my colleague Sumita is standing by to get us a roundup of these developments in West Asia.
From the Iranian side, particularly from Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Ismail Baqai, is that the sovereign rights of the Strait of Hormuz are non-negotiable. Remember, this commentary is coming in even as tensions between the United States and Iran have escalated, and of course in recent days over who controls the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, Baqai also stated that an MOU is worthwhile if all parties are committed to it. But the silver lining amidst all of this is that Baqai has indicated that intermediaries have shared messages with Tehran over the recent past few days. In fact, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has also reportedly stated that the U.S. is receiving signals of Iran's desire to negotiate. And remember, this is coming in even as the U.S. CENTCOM claimed that it completed the 9th consecutive night of strikes against Iran. And these strikes targeted command centers, air defense sites, missile facilities, and communications networks. This also says that the goal of these strikes remains to degrade Iran's capabilities that are threatening shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, amidst all of these skirmishes and, of course, the escalation of hostilities, what we have seen reportedly is that the under-construction Darkovin nuclear power plant site has been attacked as well. However, Iran has reported no radiation attack. In fact, there have been multiple attacks in the vicinity of the Bushehr plant as well. And meanwhile, from the Iranian side, as expected, Gulf states like Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, they have been attacked. And in fact, these states or these countries have intercepted drones. In fact, when we talk about the Strait of Hormuz, well, that is the key contention between both the sides on who really controls the management of the Strait of Hormuz, because this is something that has been expressed from both the sides. In fact, if we see what Marco Rubio stated, he said that it is clear that some people in Iran want to control the strait and hold that as a leverage against the world. And this is something that Iran has very categorically mentioned ever since the MOU was arrived at in June. Meanwhile, what's also happening is that South Asia's top diplomats are going to express alarm over renewed hostilities. In fact, this is going to be at the East Asia Summit of Foreign Ministers meeting. And the attendees include U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, amongst many others.
Right. Sumita, thank you so much for those updates. Now, let's quickly take a look at how the Wall Street is faring at the start of the week. U.S. markets opened on a mixed note. The S&P 500 edged up 0.26%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite gained 0.5%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, however, slipped 0.3% in early trade. Chip makers, in fact, led the gains as investors snapped up beaten down semiconductor stocks following their sharp sell-off last week. Meanwhile, oil prices were largely steady. U.S. crude futures hovered around $82 a barrel after reversing early gains, while the international benchmark Brent traded marginally higher at just under $88 a barrel. Now, let's also move on and speak about how the markets fare in India, Jude.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, let's take a look at how domestic markets fare today, with the Nifty closing at about 24,250 mark, even as broader markets saw a strong surge today. Private banks, in fact, were the top sectoral losers, while PSU banks, pharma and healthcare also surged in trade. ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank were the top losers in the Nifty today.
Now, moving on, RBI has said that Indian banks have raised $17.4 billion through FCNR deposit scheme since June 8th. As per RBI, swap facility has witnessed avid interest and attracted steady forex inflows. My colleague Anurag Joshi gets us more details on this.
Indian banks have raised $17.4 billion through FCNRB deposits, following the RBI steps on June 5 to offer concessional swaps in a bid to stabilize the rupee. The offshore capital raised via overseas foreign currency borrowings was almost $2 billion, the central bank said, whereas external commercial borrowings raised under the concessional swaps program totaled $1.34 billion. The RBI unveiled steps to stabilize the rupee on June 5, and this followed the rupee touching an all-time lows in May. The measures are offering concessional swaps on new FCNRB deposits, CCBs and OFCBs, and this concessional swaps makes the fundraisings for banks cheaper, as this subsidizes the hedging costs for the lenders, and it makes at the same time it makes FCNRB deposits more attractive for the customers of banks overseas. The RBI swap facility is until September 30 for FCNRB deposits, whereas it is there until the end of the calendar year for OFCBs and for ECBs. The RBI said that the swap facility has seen an avid interest and attracted steady forex inflows.
Right, thanks for that, Anurag. But do stay on with us, because we're also hearing that despite mounting losses at Air India, Singapore Airlines has left the door open for future capital infusion into the airline major. In its response to the Securities Investors Association, Singapore Airlines has described its 25.1% stake in the enlarged Air India group as a cornerstone of its multi-hub strategy. So Anurag is back with us to take us through the significance of this statement. Anurag.
Air India is making tangible progress in its transformational process. Singapore Airlines, which owns a 25% equity stake in the carrier, said in a reply to the Securities Investors Association of the city-state. Singapore Airlines made these comments ahead of its annual general meeting. The Singapore Airlines board will carefully consider any request for additional capital from Air India, and the Singapore Airlines will take into consideration the group's other capital requirements and Air India's business strategy. SIA's board group's capital allocation follows a disciplined evaluation process, the Singapore Airlines said in the reply. Singapore Airlines also considers its operating cash flow, investment needs in new aircraft and multi-hub investments such as Air India while allocating capital. The SIA's 25.1% equity stake in the enlarged Air India has been described by the airline as a pillar of the group's multi-hub strategy and recognizes India's growth potential and the aviation market potential. Air India continues to face well-publicized challenges, and these challenges includes high fuel prices, the depreciation of the rupee, the supply chain disruptions following the headwinds from the West Asia conflict, Pakistani airspace closure following Operation Sindoor, and also the Air India 171 accident last year.
Now, moving on, let's speak about artificial intelligence. The global artificial intelligence race has intensified with Chinese startup Moonshot AI unveiling its latest flagship model, Kimi K3. The company claims that it is world's largest open-weight AI system and delivers performance approaching Anthropic's frontier Fable model. My colleague Darshita joins in with more details on this.
Right, China's AI startup Moonshot AI has unveiled Kimi K3, becoming the first Chinese AI model to top the AI coding arena leaderboard. Now, this isn't just another AI launch. The biggest differentiator is that the Kimi K3 is an open-weight model. In simple terms, it means that the businesses can download it, customize it, and deploy it on their own servers. This means greater flexibility, stronger data privacy, and potentially much lower cost. Now, compare that with the proprietary AI models from companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, where enterprises typically rely on paid APIs and subscriptions-based access. And that is why the street is watching this closely. If powerful AI models become cheaper and more accessible, premium AI providers could find it harder to justify the significantly higher pricing. But there's another angle to this. Lower AI costs could dramatically speed up the enterprise's adoption. Instead of limiting AI to one or two use cases, companies could deploy it across customer support, software development, finance, HR, and multiple other operations that the businesses functions in. And that creates opportunity beyond AI model developers. Software companies that embed AI into their products and IT services firms that help enterprises integrate, customize, and manage multiple AI models could emerge as some of the biggest beneficiaries to this. So AI race is no longer just about who builds the smartest model. It's increasingly about who makes AI more affordable, scalable, and practical for businesses worldwide.
Moving on to automobiles next, Chennai-based CV maker Ashok Leyland has launched India's first range of air suspension trucks. The new AVTR range promises higher payload capacity, better ride comfort, improved efficiency, and lower operating costs, setting a new benchmark in the commercial vehicle segment. We have Sanjeev Kumar, President and Head MHCVs at Ashok Leyland, with more on this.
Ashok Leyland आज इंडिया में पहली बार एयर सस्पेंशन ट्रक को लॉन्च कर रहा है. दिस इज द फर्स्ट एयर सस्पेंशन एमपीवी ट्रक्स बीइंग लॉन्च्ड इन इंडिया, जो हमें ऑफर करते हैं 4 टन एक्स्ट्रा पेलोड. ये ट्रक्स 49 टनर, 46 टनर और 45 टन जीवीडब्ल्यू वर्जन में लॉन्च कर रहे हैं हम लोग. ये दोनों कैबिन और कॉल में अवेलेबल रहेंगे.
Well, it is time for us to slip into a very short break on Business at 9. You don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Business at 9 with Shibani and me, Jude Sanat from our Mumbai studios. Moving on, in a written response, the Finance Ministry has ruled out scrapping the long-term capital gains tax for retail and domestic investors, saying that no such proposal is presently under consideration. It also clarified that LTCG rates for domestic investors remain aligned with FPIs in equities. Meanwhile, the FPIs themselves will continue to get tax exemption on GSEC investments. Separately, the RBI has also said it has not sold any gold, with reserves steady at 880.52 tons, while the centre also reiterated that there is no proposal to privatize public sector banks. Prakash has sent us this report earlier today.
Well, the government provides clarification on some key issues through a written reply in Lok Sabha. In fact, the government has informed that there is no proposal under consideration to abolish the long-term capital gains tax for retail and domestic investors. In fact, the MOS in Finance Minister Pankaj Chaudhary has informed that the tax rate for LTCG for domestic and retail investors remains the same as the tax rate for FPIs for investments in equity. However, FPIs are exempt from the tax on government securities. You are aware of the fact that the government has already issued an ordinance to provide exemption in long-term capital gains tax and withholding tax on interest income. Now, the government is well set to introduce a bill to replace the ordinance. In addition to that, on the issue of gold monetization, the government has informed that the RBI has already clarified that it has not sold any gold. In fact, as of May 2026, the physical stock of gold held as part of foreign exchange reserves by the RBI remains unchanged at 880 tons. Along with that, on the issue of PSB's privatization, the MOS Finance Minister Pankaj Chaudhary has informed the House that presently there is no such proposal under consideration of the government on privatization of PSBs.
And then it was a stormy start to monsoon session of Parliament. Lok Sabha witnessed continued disruptions and adjournments, with opposition MPs raising slogans and displaying placards over the neat paper leak and the alleged theft of donations at Ram Temple. Key bills such as the Income Tax Bill 2026, MSME Development Bill were on cards. Rajya Sabha was adjourned for the day amid uproar by the opposition members. Prakash had reported this earlier. Let's take a look.
Well, this was a stormy start of the monsoon session of Parliament as opposition parties attacked government right from the beginning, raising various political issues. In fact, opposition parties led by Congress demanded government to initiate discussions on the neat paper leak issue along with the Ram Temple donation theft issues. These demands were not accepted by the government, and therefore opposition parties started raising slogans and protest inside the House. And that led the Speaker to adjourn the House for the day. Before that, the Union Law Minister, Mr. Arjun Ram Meghwal, introduced the Supreme Court Number of Judges Amendment Bill 2026. The bill seeks to increase the number of judges in the Supreme Court from 33 to 37. Outside the Parliament, there was huge ruckus and chaos due to members of Cockroach Janata Party marched towards the Parliament. However, they were stopped midway by Delhi police and central forces. So it's a very dynamic situation at this point in time. In fact, developments are unfolding. They were demanding the education minister's resignations. Thousands of protesters are still gathered nearby Parliament House. However, government is trying to find a middle path. In fact, they are trying to coordinate with the CGP members to find any resolution of this deadlock. We heard that Union Minister JP Nadda had discussion with the members of CJP. Let's see how it pans out. But at this point in time, situation is unfolding, and thousands of protesters are still gathered nearby Parliament.
Moving on, the index of core industries grew by 5% in June 2026 on a year-on-year basis, even as iron ore and electricity have been the major drivers of overall growth of the ICI during recent months. My colleague Kuldeep gets us more details.
Well, the index of core industries recorded growth of 5% in the month of June, which is at 5-month high. In the month of May, the growth in core sector industries were 3.2%. The biggest drivers behind this growth in the month of June are iron ore and electricity. The iron ore industries recorded growth of 43.9%, which is highest for the month of June. But the reason behind this growth is the base effect also, because in the month of June 2025, the iron ore industry recorded contraction of over 16%. Now coming to the electricity sector, the growth here was 9.8% in the month of June. And remember, electricity has the highest weight in the index of core industries now, nearly 30%. Apart from electricity and iron ore, cement sector also grew 9.8%. And steel sector grew at 4.6%. Of the 9 sectors in core sector industries, 4 recorded contraction in the month of June, and among them are natural gas 7.4%, refinery products 4.7%, crude oil 4.2%, and fertilizer 3.3%. The reason behind this fertilizer, in fact, the contraction in fertilizer and crude oil and natural gas, it reflects the impact of West Asia.
Kuldeep, thank you so much for that. Now, moving on, Britain has a new Prime Minister, 7th in the past 10 years. Andy Burnham has formally taken office after Keir Starmer resigned and has wasted no time outlining his top priority. In his first public remark as the Prime Minister, Burnham pledged to end homelessness. The announcement signals the new government's focus on social welfare and housing as Burnham begins his tenure at 10 Downing Street.
We will help people to live well, building a more preventative state, investing in people's success rather than paying for failure. And that work starts now. I will soon go through that door behind me and issue my first instruction to end rough sleeping in our country.
In fact, Keir Starmer wasn't the only minister out, and because following in the footsteps of his Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, that is the Deputy Prime Minister of the UK, David Lammy, has also stepped down and tendered his resignation to King Charles III. David Lammy served, remember, as the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom until September last year. He had played an important role in the finalising of the landmark India-UK Free Trade Agreement. Additionally, more high-profile ministers like Chancellor Rachel Reeves and Environment Secretary Steve Reed have also stepped down from power.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business at 9. Goodbye from me, Shibani Gharat, Jude Sanit right here in the studio, and entire team of ET Now.